Golden child brother stole and totaled my brand new truck, then my parents had the audacity to side with him. Said I was overreacting, and it's just a car. So I got him arrested, sued him for damages, and cut contact with all of them. Now they're furious I broke the family, but I'm finally at peace. Now they're the ones begging for help. It would be the constant chorus of my parents saying, "Mike didn't mean it, Eli. He's just a kid." Growing up in my family was like living in a world where my older brother Mike, 22M, wore an invisible crown labeled Golden Boy. He could break every rule, and somehow my parents, Sharon and Doug, would twist things around so it was never his fault. Meanwhile, Eli, 21M, was the scapegoat. If Mike broke something, it was my fault for not watching him. If he failed a class, it was because I didn't help him study enough. You get the idea. Mike had this unbelievable sense of entitlement, like everything that was mine automatically belonged to him too. When we were kids, he'd steal my toys and wreck them. I remember saving up for months to buy this amazing RC car, a sleek, fast one with working headlights. Mike begged to play with it, and like an idiot, I caved. Within 5 minutes, he crashed it into a curb and laughed it off. I ran to my mom, crying, and all she said was, "Boys will be boys. You can't expect him to be careful at his age." He was 12. He knew better. By the time we hit our teens, Mike's stealing got worse. He'd take my clothes, my money, even my bike. One time, he took my bike to school and left it in the rain for 3 days because he forgot where he parked it. I found it rusted and wrecked in a ditch. When I confronted him, my mom sighed and said, "You need to share, Eli. He's your brother." Meanwhile, my parents acted like they were doing me a huge favor by supporting me. I busted my ass babysitting, mowing lawns, and shoveling driveways to save for college. But anytime I asked them for gas money or school supplies, it came with a lecture about how they weren't made of money and how I needed to learn the value of a dollar. But Mike, he could blow through anything, and they just replace it. His first car, a beat-up Toyota, lasted 6 months before he totaled it. My parents bought him another one, a junky Honda, that he wrecked within a year. Did they let him face the consequences? Of course not. They just handed him another car, saying, "He's young. He'll learn." I didn't get the chance to learn. By the time I turned 18, I was done. After one especially bad blow-up where Mike borrowed my laptop and then blamed me for leaving it where he could grab it, I'd had enough. I called my Uncle Frank, my mom's older brother, and the only adult in my life who actually made sense. Uncle Frank, a retired cop, was no nonsense but fair. He agreed to let me move in with him. He even handed me the keys to his old Ford F-150. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. A workhorse with a few dents and scratches from Frank's years on the job. But it was mine. The first thing in my life that wasn't Mike's by default. That truck became my pride and joy. I kept it clean, learned how to maintain it, and even started doing small hauling gigs on the side. It was my lifeline, my independence. Of course, Mike hated it. Anytime I drove it to my parents' house, he'd find a reason to complain. "Why do you get a truck?" he'd whine. "Mom and Dad didn't buy me a truck. That's not fair." I'd remind him again and again that Uncle Frank gave it to me, not our parents. But in Mike's mind, anything nice I had was something he was entitled to. Then Mike wrecked his third car. This time, he was driving like an idiot and smashed into a pole. The next day, he showed up at my parents' house acting like the world owed him a favor. "What am I supposed to do now?" he whined. "I need a car to get to work." My mom looked at me like I was the answer to all of life's problems. "Eli, why don't you let your brother borrow your truck? He really needs it." I didn't even hesitate. No, Mike's jaw practically hit the floor. "What do you mean, no? You don't even use it all the time." "It's my truck," I said, "and I'm not letting you wreck it like you did your other cars." Cue the guilt trips. My mom started in, "Eli, he's your brother. Family helps family." My dad chimed in, "You're being selfish. You can take the bus for a few days." But I wasn't budging. That truck was my life, my way to get to work, run errands, and do my side gigs. Letting Mike drive, it would be like handing over the keys to my future and watching him crash it. I refused. Mike sulked for days, and my parents acted like I'd committed a crime by saying no. Honestly, they were good at that, making me feel guilty for being the only reasonable one in the room. I thought that was the end of it. But Mike wasn't the type to let things go, and my parents weren't the type to hold him accountable. What happened next was a disaster I'll never forget. I should have known Mike wasn't going to let go. To him, no didn't mean no. It just meant try again later or find another way to get what you want. A few days after our argument, I left work and headed to the parking lot. I always parked my truck in the same spot a little further out so it wouldn't get dinged. But when I got there, it was gone. At first, I thought maybe I parked somewhere else and just forgot. But after walking the entire lot twice, reality hit me like a punch in the gut. "Mike." I called him immediately. He picked up after a few rings, sounding way too casual. "Hey bro, what's up? Where's my truck, Mike?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Oh, don't worry about it. I just borrowed it for a bit. I'll bring it back soon," he said, like he was doing me a favor. "Are you kidding me? Bring it back right now, or I'm calling the cops." "You're overreacting," he scoffed. It's just a truck. I hung up and started pacing. How the hell did he get in my truck? I always kept the keys with me, and Mike wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. Then it hit me. Some F-150 models have spare keys that are easy to replicate if you know the VIN number. The thought made my blood boil. Mike actually went out of his way to get a key made just to steal my truck. About 30 minutes later, he pulled into the lot, acting like this was all some hilarious prank. The truck was a mess. Mud splattered down the sides, fast food wrappers all over the passenger seat, and the faint stench of cigarettes. Mike climbed out, grinning like he'd just done me a favor. See? No harm, no foul, he said, tossing me the keys. I lost it. What the hell is wrong with you, Mike? You stole my truck and trashed it. Relax, it's not a big deal, he said, shrugging like it was all some kind of joke. I needed a ride to work. You weren't even using it. Are you out of your mind? I snapped. You don't get to decide when I'm not using my truck. You have no idea how much I depend on it. At that point, a couple of my coworkers walked by, clearly trying not to stare. Great. Now, on top of everything else, Mike was causing a scene and embarrassing me in front of people I work with. I told him to leave, but made it crystal clear. If he ever touched my truck again, I'd call the cops. Mike just laughed, walking away like I was joking. That was the thing about him. He never took anything seriously. He always figured if he pushed hard enough, someone else would clean up his mess. That night, I called Uncle Frank and told him what happened. I half expected him to lecture me for not calling the cops right then, but instead he just sighed. I'm not surprised, he said. Your brother's been getting away with this crap for too long. You got to set some boundaries. He offered to help me install a GPS tracker in the truck, just in case I tried something like this again. Frank wasn't the type to say, I told you so, but I could tell he was thinking it. Next time, don't even call him. Just call the cops. He needs to learn there are consequences. The next morning, I spent 2 hours scrubbing the truck. The mud was so caked on, it looked like Mike had driven through a swamp. The inside was just as bad. Fast food grease stains on the seats, soda spills on the floor mats, and a cigarette smell that wouldn't go away no matter how much air freshener I used. It felt like a personal violation. That truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was my independence. My way out of the dysfunction I grew up in. And Mike had treated it like trash. When I got home, my mom called. I thought maybe she'd heard what happened and was going to apologize. But of course I was wrong. Eli, she started in that tone she always used when she was about to scold me. Mike told me you yelled at him last night. Was that really necessary? Are you serious right now? I asked. He stole my truck, Mom. He borrowed it, she corrected. And he said he brought it back. You didn't have to make such a big deal out of it. Borrowing implies permission. He stole it and trashed it. You're being so dramatic, she said, sighing like I was the problem. You know how hard things have been for him lately. He's your brother, Eli. Family helps family. I hung up. I couldn't deal with the mental gymnastics anymore. No matter what Mike did, they always found a way to justify it. And no matter how much I stood up for myself, they always made me feel like I was the bad guy. For a few weeks, things were quiet. Mike avoided me, probably because he didn't want another argument. My parents gave me the silent treatment. Part of me thought maybe they'd finally realized I wasn't going to roll over anymore. But the truth was, they were just waiting for the next chance to dump Mike's problems on me. Uncle Frank's advice was starting to make more sense. If Mike ever pulled something like that again, I wouldn't argue. I just called the cops and let him deal with the fallout. What I didn't realize was that the next time I took my truck, things would escalate way beyond what I could have imagined. By the time Christmas rolled around, things between me, Mike, and the rest of the family were still tense. After the whole truck fiasco, Mike had been avoiding me, and my parents were still giving me the cold shoulder. But it was Christmas, and like every year, I showed up at the family gathering. I wasn't there for them. I came for my cousins, my Uncle Frank, and the food. The day started off fine, but it didn't take long for the cracks to show. As soon as I walked through the door, my mom greeted me with one of her passive-aggressive comments. Oh, Eli, you made it. I wasn't sure you'd show up after all the drama this month, she said, loud enough for everyone in the living room to hear. I ignored her, dropped my coat on the nearest chair, and headed straight for the kitchen. Frank was there, sipping coffee and chatting with Aunt Linda. Merry Christmas, kid, he said, giving me a firm pat on the back. He must have seen the irritation on my face because he leaned in and muttered, let it roll off. Don't let her get to you. The day dragged on with the usual holiday chaos. Kids running around, aunts and uncles arguing over politics, and my mom sneaking in little digs whenever she thought no one was listening. Eli's gotten so protective of that truck, she said to one of my cousins. It's like he thinks it's made of gold. I clenched my jaw but kept my mouth shut. No point in starting a fight over Christmas dinner. Mike, on the other hand, was unusually quiet. He stayed glued to his phone, barely making eye contact with anyone. It fell off, but I figured he was sulking because I'd shut him down so hard last time. I didn't care. I was just happy to have him stay out of my way. As the evening wore on, I noticed something strange. My truck keys, which I always kept clipped to my belt loop, were missing. At first, I thought I dropped them somewhere, so I started retracing my steps. I checked the kitchen, the living room, even the bathroom, but they were nowhere. That's when the dread started creeping in. I stepped outside, and sure enough, my truck wasn't parked where I'd left it. My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS tracker app. The little dot representing my truck was already a few miles away, moving fast. I stormed back inside and called Mike. "Where's my truck, Mike?" I demanded. He didn't even bother denying it. "Relax, bro. I'm just picking up a friend. I'll bring it back in like an hour." "You stole my truck again." My voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to stop what they were doing. "It's not stealing if we're family," Mike said, shrugging. "Don't be so uptight. It's Christmas." Before I could respond, Frank walked in, immediately sensing the tension. "What's going on?" he asked. "Mike took my truck again," I said, practically shouting. Frank's jaw tightened, but before he could say anything, my mom swooped in. "Oh, come on, Eli. It's Christmas. Can't you just let it go for one day?" "No, I can't let it go," I snapped. "It's not his truck, and he has no right to take it." Frank gave me a nod and pulled me aside. "Check the tracker. Let's see where he's headed." I opened the app, and that's when I noticed something terrifying. The trucks that had stopped moving. It was in the middle of a highway exit ramp. I called Mike, but he didn't pick up. The third time I tried, he finally answered. "What now?" he said, sounding annoyed. "Where are you?" "The tracker says you're on the highway." There was a pause, and then his tone shifted. Yeah, about that, I kind of lost control on the ice. "The truck's fine, though. It's just stuck in a ditch." "You what?" I yelled, making no effort to hide my fury. Everyone in the room was staring now. Mike mumbled something about the roads being bad and hung up. I threw on my coat, grabbed Frank, and headed for the door. "We're going to get my truck," I said, ignoring my mom's half-hearted, "Be nice to your brother." When we got to the scene, my truck was nose-deep in a snowbank. The front bumper was crumpled, the left headlight shattered, and the grill was twisted beyond recognition. Mike stood by the side of the road, arms crossed like it was somehow my fault. "It's not that bad," he said as I stepped out of the car. "It's just cosmetic." "You wrecked my truck," I said through clenched teeth. "What the hell were you thinking? The roads are icy." "It's not my fault," he shot back. Before I could respond, a police cruiser pulled up behind us, lights flashing. I wasn't surprised. Someone probably called it in. The officer stepped out, looking at the truck, then at Mike. "What happened here?" he asked. Before Mike could say a word, my parents pulled up in their van, rushing over like they were about to save the day. "Officer, this is all a misunderstanding," my mom started. Eli was driving, and "Don't even start." I cut her off. "Mike stole my truck. I've got the GPS logs to prove it." The officer raised an eyebrow and turned to Mike. "Is that true?" Mike stammered, but Frank jumped in. "He's been drinking too. You might want to check." They gave Mike a breathalyzer. He failed. He was cuffed on the spot for DUI and driving on a suspended license. My mom started wailing, begging the officer to be reasonable, but Frank shut her down. "Enough, Sharon. Let him face the consequences for once." I stayed silent as they loaded Mike into the cruiser. My truck was pulled out of the ditch, but the damage was done. On the drive back to the house, Frank glanced over at me. "Next time, don't wait for him to screw up. Call the cops the moment he pulls this crap." He was right, but this was just the start. Mike wasn't done causing chaos, and I was far from done dealing with it. The ride back to the house was dead silent. My parents sat in the front, probably stewing over how unfair it was that Mike got arrested. Frank and I sat in the back. He looked calm as ever. That's the thing about Frank. Nothing rattles him. But me? I was fuming. Not just at Mike, but at my parents for enabling him for so long. The moment we walked through the door, my mom spun around, her face red with anger. "How could you let this happen to your brother?" she hissed. I stared at her in disbelief. "Let this happen? He stole my truck, wrecked it, and was drinking while driving on a suspended license. That's on him, not me." "He's your brother," she snapped. "You should have handled this privately, not dragged the cops into it." Frank stepped in before I could explode. "Sharon, your son broke the law. Multiple laws. This isn't something you can sweep under the rug." "Don't talk to me like I don't know how to handle my own children, Frank," she shot back. "You've always played favorites with Eli, making Mike look like the bad guy." Frank laughed dryly. "Mike doesn't need help looking like the bad guy. He does that just fine on his own." Before she could respond, my dad tried to play peacemaker. "Let's all calm down. Mike made a mistake, but we're family. We need to stick together." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Stick together? You've been covering for him his entire life. You're not helping him. You're enabling him." My dad shook his head like I was the one who didn't get it. "He's had a rough time, Eli. You wouldn't understand. Harder for him." I scoffed. "He's been handed everything, while I've had to work for everything I have. And look where it's gotten him. Arrested again." Frank raised a hand. "Enough. This isn't going anywhere. Eli, go cool off. Sharon, Doug, you need to take a long, hard look at how you're handling Mike. Because the cops aren't going to let him off so easy next time." I didn't wait for their response. I grabbed my jacket and went out to the garage to check on my truck. It had been towed back while we were still at the station. Seeing it up close made my blood boil all over again. The front bumper was mangled, the left headlight smashed, and the grille looked like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. The interior wasn't much better. Mud everywhere and that same stale cigarette smell Mike had left last time. It's just cosmetic, Mike had said, like that was supposed to make it okay. The next day, I got a call from Mike. Somehow, he managed to get access to a phone from the county jail. I let it ring a few times before picking up. What do you want? Eli, I'm so sorry, man, he said, his voice trembling. This was all just a misunderstanding. I rolled my eyes. A misunderstanding? You stole my truck, wrecked it, and got arrested for a DUI. What part of that is confusing? He sighed. Look, I screwed up. I know that. But I need your help. There it was. The real reason he called. What do you want, Mike? Bail me out, he said, like it was the most reasonable request in the world. Mom and Dad don't have the money, and no, I cut him off. I'm not bailing you out. Eli, please, he begged. I can't stay in here. It's awful. These guys, they're rough. Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole my truck, I said coldly. You're on your own. I hung up before he could respond. A few minutes later, my mom called. Eli, you need to bail your brother out. Why can't you or Dad do it? We don't have that kind of money right now, she admitted. You know, we've been helping him get back on his feet. I laughed bitterly. Helping him? You mean enabling him? Eli, don't be like this, she pleaded. He's your brother, and he's a grown man who needs to face the consequences of his actions, I said. Don't call me about this again. I hung up and blocked her number for the rest of the day. Later that evening, Frank came by with some news. Turns out, Mike's not just looking at a DUI. He's also facing charges for driving on a suspended license, reckless driving, and theft. Theft? I asked, surprised. Yeah, Frank said with a shrug. Technically, he stole your truck. Since you didn't give him permission, the cops added it to the list. For a second, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I thought about all the times Mike had taken advantage of me, all the excuses my parents had made for him, all the crap I'd put up with. Good, I said. Maybe this will finally teach him a lesson. Frank gave me a small nod of approval. We'll see. Knowing your parents, they'll try to smooth it over. Sure enough, over the next week, they scrambled to pull together money from Mike's bail, borrowing from family, and even dipping into their retirement fund. When they finally got him out, he came straight to their house, looking like he'd been through hell. Mike didn't say a word to me when I stopped by to grab some things I'd left in their garage. He just sat on the couch, staring at the floor. Part of me wanted to believe he'd finally learned his lesson, but deep down I knew better. When I stopped by to grab some of my tools, she was sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of bills spread out in front of her. She looked more stressed than I'd ever seen her. We already borrowed from Aunt Linda just to keep up with your court costs, she said, her voice strained. Mike was sitting across from her, arms crossed, looking annoyed. So what am I supposed to do? He snapped. I can't work without a car, and I can't pay the fines if I'm not working. My dad chimed in, trying to play the voice of reason. Maybe it's time to sell some of your stuff. The look on Mike's face was priceless. You'd think they'd asked him to sell a kidney. Seriously? You want me to sell my stuff over one little mistake? It wasn't one mistake, I said, leaning against the doorway. It was a series of bad decisions that got you here. Maybe it's time you face the consequences. Mike glared at me, but stayed silent. He knew he didn't have a leg to stand on. Over the next few weeks, Mike's financial situation only got worse. With no income and no car, he was forced to take a part-time job delivering pizzas on foot, borrowing my parents' ancient minivan when absolutely necessary. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mike, the self-proclaimed golden boy, now reduced to delivering pizzas. He hated every second of it. One day, I was visiting Uncle Frank when Mike showed up with a pizza delivery. The look on his face when he saw us was worth every headache he'd ever caused me. Frank gave him a little wave. Good to see you working, Mike. Keep it up, Frank said. Mike muttered something under his breath and practically sprinted back to the minivan. I couldn't help but laugh. For the first time in his life, Mike was being humbled, and I was here for it. Despite everything, my parents still couldn't let go of their golden boy. They kept making excuses for him, even as they struggled to cover their own bills after pouring money into his legal mess. Your brother's trying his best, my mom said during a call one day, clearly fishing for sympathy. You don't understand how hard this has been for him. Hard for him, I said, incredulous. It's been hard for you because you keep cleaning up his messes. Maybe if you let him deal with it himself, he'd actually learn something. You don't know what it's like to have a child in trouble, she shot back. You'd do the same thing if you were a parent. No, I said firmly. I wouldn't, because I'd raise my kid to take responsibility for their actions, something you've never done with Mike. That shut her up, at least for a moment. But I knew it wouldn't last. My parents were too deep in their enabling ways to change now. One evening, Mike showed up at my place unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there, looking sheepish. Can we talk? He asked. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Mike? I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. For everything. Taking your truck, wrecking it, getting you caught up in my mess. For a moment, I almost believed him. But then he added, so, I was wondering if you'd be willing to lend me some money, just to get me back on my feet. I laughed bitterly. Are you serious? After everything you've put me through, you think I'm just going to hand you money? It's not like that, he said quickly. I'd pay you back. Like you pay Mom and Dad back for all the money they've spent on you? I shot back. The answer is no, Mike. And don't bother asking again. His expression darkened. You don't have to be such a jerk about it. Maybe if you'd learned to take care of yourself years ago, you wouldn't be in this mess, I said. This is your problem, Mike. Figure it out. He stormed off, muttering under his breath, and I slammed the door behind him. I was done. Done with Mike, done with my parents, and done being dragged into their chaos. As Mike's financial and legal troubles piled up, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. For once, I wasn't the one cleaning up his mess. I wasn't the one getting blamed for his failures. Mike was finally being forced to face the consequences of his actions, and it felt good. Karma has a funny way of catching up to people, and it looked like Mike was finally getting his share. But the fallout from Mike's antics didn't just hit him. It was like the entire family was falling apart, and I was the only one ready to walk away. My parents were struggling financially after bailing Mike out, but instead of holding him accountable, they doubled down on their enabling ways. Meanwhile, Mike was still playing the victim, trying to weasel out of every responsibility. It all came to a head one evening when my mom called me, already gearing up for another guilt trip. Eli, we need to talk about Mike, she started, her voice taking on that familiar, pleading tone. What about him? I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Well, he's been having a really hard time, she said. You know, with everything, the legal trouble, the job situation. We were hoping you could, I don't know, maybe let him stay with you for a little while. Just until he gets back on his feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you kidding me? I said, after everything he's done, you want me to take him in? It's not like that, Eli, she said, sounding exasperated. He just needs a little support right now. He's your brother. I let out a bitter laugh. No, Mom. If you want to keep enabling him, that's on you. But I'm done. After I hung up, I knew I was done. Not just with Mike, but with my parents too. For years, they treated me like I was less important, like my role in the family was to clean up after Mike and take the blame for his mistakes. I'd spent so much time trying to prove myself to them. But that night, I realized something. I didn't owe them anything. The thing about cutting ties with toxic family members is that they don't always take no for an answer. My mom kept calling, leaving voicemails that swung between guilt-tripping and outright denial. Eli, we need to talk. This isn't like you, one message said. Another one was more dramatic. I don't know what we did to deserve this, but you're breaking this family apart. Each time, I deleted the messages without listening to the rest. I didn't owe them an explanation. I'd already made my decision. And for once, I didn't regret it.